Now, recently I got asked this question in my comments if I'll ever like The Last Jedi, and quite simply the answer to that is no. I'm never going to change my mind about that movie. It is not something I am ever going to enjoy. However, it did get me thinking, is there any way I could have or would have liked the movie if it were just a little bit different? If just one major thing, maybe something towards the end, was changed, which would then perhaps cause a sort of ripple effect backwards, one where other things along the way would have to be altered to fit with the new trajectory of the story. In other words, if we change the destination, if we change where this is all going, could the journey also be changed in some ways to fit? All the while more or less keeping the gist of the movie or how events play out intact or relatively the same. Could one change really make for a better movie, or at least one that doesn't dead end the whole trilogy, and instead leaves some interesting possibilities for Episode 9 to explore? I don't think J.J. Abrams is the greatest writer and director of all time, but certainly The Rise of Skywalker was not all his fault. Either way, and getting right to it now, the change that we'd need to make that would then require other things to be altered along the way is Rey taking Kylo Ren's hand towards the end of the film. That being where the movie is now going, with Rey essentially failing to resist Kylo and the pull to the dark, or finding that belonging she is seeking, would then require a few other things to be changed to set that all up, and to, again, set up Episode 9. And mind you, I think even if everything else would be kept exactly the same, Rey taking Kylo's hand already makes more sense and makes for a better movie. In fact, it actually seemed like where the movie was quite obviously heading. But Rian Johnson doesn't like to do anything obvious. I think he'd rather subvert your expectations and do something stupid than have something be obvious and the movie make sense but be maybe a bit predictable. But anyway, enough talk about him, and let's remember that going into Episode 8, the one thing Rey was seeking above all else was, like I said before, it was belonging. She'd been abandoned by someone as a child and had then grown up all alone on a hostile desert planet where she had always had to fend for herself and couldn't ever really trust anyone else. So really, this movie, again, Episode 8, should have been all about where or how is Rey going to find that belonging? How is she going to fill that void in her life? And will she make the right choice, or will an all-consuming desire for it lead to the wrong choice? And right away the movie, again, obviously sets up that she's eventually going to make the wrong choice here. Early on in her training with Luke, she goes straight to the dark side. And the dark side, to put it very simply, it's selfishness. It's the things we want. And so if Rey is going straight to the dark, and we know what she wants is, again, belonging, we can put it together that her desire for belonging is the thing that drives her more than anything else. That she will even make a wrong or very selfish choice to find it. And if she isn't going to do that, we need it explained as to why, which is where The Last Jedi really fails, or one of the places it fails. Rey just rejects Kylo Ren because, well, she's Rey, because she is good. And yeah, someone out there is going to be like, well, Luke rejects Vader in The Empire Strikes Back just because. Problem is, that's not what happened there. Earlier in the film, Luke saw what could happen to him if he embraced the dark side. He could become just like Darth Vader. He's now even learned that Vader is his father, further upping the chances of becoming just like his old man if he joins him, and Luke totally rejects that. Rey, however, has received no such warning. Instead, she's been manipulated by Kylo the whole time, thus further cementing the idea she'd make the wrong choice when the time comes. Again, it seems very obvious, but Johnson says, no, I must subvert your expectations. But again, putting Johnson aside, if we're now making the movie's destination Rey taking Kylo's hand to find that belonging at any cost, a few other things to set that up or help that or work in conjunction with that will be needed or need to be considered. Not the least of which is what will the outcome of all this ultimately be, meaning in Episode 9. If we have Rey and Kylo joining forces, and we have to assume that, yes, Rey has fallen to the dark side if she takes his hand, maybe not hopelessly so, where she could never ever come back, despite it being very hard to come back, but we do have to assume she has fallen to the dark side, and we have to set something up to eventually either save her or stop her, to save and stop both her and Kylo, actually, in Episode 9. Now, the easy answer would be Luke. We could just have him be the one who saves the day in the end, meaning he doesn't die in this film. However, though, we can absolutely have Luke be part of the solution, because no, he's not going to die this time around. More on that in a bit. We do want one of the new characters to be our big new hero in the end in order to sell action figures and merchandise and to be the future of the franchise. And the obvious choice there is someone who already has a connection with both Kylo and Rey, and was maybe hinted at being force sensitive in the last movie, that of course being Finn. And yes, Finn does have a connection of sorts to Kylo Ren. Let's not forget Kylo sliced open his back at the end of The Force Awakens, all but killing him. Though in your defense, if you did forget that, he does wake up in Episode 8 and is just fine. The whole thing is never ever mentioned or alluded to again. And yes, Bacta is a hell of a thing. I guess it could entirely fix his back in like a day, but let's have it where Finn wakes up and his spine isn't suddenly 100%, like it had never ever happened. We could even say the Bacta wasn't going to work and they gave him an artificial spine or something along those lines. There's a lot of different ways we could go with it. Either way, we have it where Finn is not doing so well, where he's having a lot of trouble with his new spine and doesn't move around quite the same way anymore. That he may never move right ever again. That this once highly trained First Order trooper, and if we wanted, we could go back to The Force Awakens and make him a specialist or something. That he was one of the best, hence why he was assigned to Phasma Squad, and why they did missions for or with Kylo Ren. Again, he's one of the best the First Order has to offer, and he does take some pride in that, or would have, even if he realized he was working for the bad guys. But whatever, we'll leave that out. We can't fix all of it. I mean, we could try to fix all of it, but this would be a much, much, much longer video. And so here he's the Finn we know in The Force Awakens as it was. Still, we have to assume a good trooper who had some skill he could probably take some pride in, and he's essentially been crippled, and it's all thanks to Kylo Ren, the guy who is also going to take Rey away to take his friend away. So he's got and is going to have all kinds of reasons to not like Kylo Ren, which will help us down the road in Episode 9, where again he's going to be our hero, which is what many of us thought he was going to be in the first place, after seeing the trailer for The Force Awakens. Anyway, as our eventual hero, we want Finn to struggle in this movie, and I don't mean with understanding capitalism and slavery or whatever Johnson was trying to do with him in his version of The Last Jedi, but either way, we do want Finn struggling physically and mentally in this movie with what has happened to him, what was again done to him by Kylo Ren. We want him basically feeling like he's useless now, but trying to overcome anyway, but failing. And sure, we could still have him go to Canto Bight with Rose and do all that if we really, really wanted to keep it very similar to the original version, to just change a few things about the mission so that he's again challenged more mentally and physically. But it'd make more sense to eliminate Rose altogether and to have him go with Poe on some sort of real mission instead. One to, let's say, try to steal some fuel or a refueling ship at a First Order depot Finn knows about that is close by in the next system over or something. And at this same base, they can maybe steal some sort of codes that will allow them to get away from the Supremacy's tracker. We can work on that part or how they'll work around that exactly. But we could figure that out easily enough, I suppose, and it's not really a big deal right now. Either way, the mission is ultimately going to fail. They don't get the ship or the fuel, again because Finn's mental and physical problems get in the way. But he, of course, needed to go because he's the only one that could get them into the base and knows the First Order protocol and such. Kind of like the same thing they did in The Force Awakens, yes, but we can do it again here, I think. But anyway, going on this mission then also eliminates things or characters like DJ, if you hadn't already forgotten about him.
Maybe.
And them having to sneak on board the Supremacy to disable the tracker and almost getting executed and all that. That all gets eliminated. Instead, they, again, Poe and Finn, they go back to the fleet or back to the Radis after their complete failure of a mission. And their last resort plan is to try and trick the First Order by landing a few ships on Crait to hide until they're gone. All the while Holdo stays behind and does one last jump with the Radis to try to lure the First Order away, meaning no more Holdo maneuver is required. She just jumps to wherever in the hopes they'll follow or the First Order will follow. Or better yet, we just have Admiral Akbar do all of that to give him a hero's send-off instead of forgetting about him almost entirely in this movie. But before we go on with this part of the story, we have to go back to Rey and Luke on the island. And yes, Luke can still be a bit grumpy and not exactly the Luke we all thought or expected him to be. But let's change the reason for that to fit better with what we're now doing with the story. Let's say that he didn't almost kill his nephew in his sleep, but rather after Ben fell and became Kylo, killing his students and all of that in the process, like we learn about in The Force Awakens. Luke confronted him and failed to turn him back to the light, and also couldn't bring himself to kill him, or was afraid he'd have to tap into his anger to kill him, and he would fall to the dark side. And so, after that encounter, he had a Force vision or something along those lines. We can think of something. But it sent him to the island, the site of the first Jedi Temple, to learn something of importance about the Force or about the Jedi, all the while waiting for and waiting to train the one that could stop Kylo Ren and do it one way or the other, either turning him back to the light or potentially having to kill him. And after all this time, Luke's starting to feel like he's been waiting way too long for that certain someone to finally show up, hence why he's not quite himself when Rey does. Plus, all the while he's been waiting, his nephew and the First Order have been wreaking havoc in the galaxy, and so when Rey does again show up, he immediately gets the feeling she's not the one he's been waiting for, that something isn't quite right with her, despite her showing up with the Skywalker saber that apparently directed her to him. But then when he does start to train her, after a bit of reluctance on his part, she again goes straight to the dark side, and it's all but confirmed for him that no, she is not the one. But he continues to train her nonetheless, thinking there must be something he is missing here, or that what he's supposed to do is save her from the dark side. That is kind of his speciality after all. Not to mention, again, she did show up with the right lightsaber. It's not like it may have been meant for someone else to find and bring to him. Either way, any belief he had in Rey is basically destroyed when he finds out she's been secretly talking to Kylo via the Force, which, yeah, we can still do that in here. It's a way to sell that she'd run off to save him as they bond over their loneliness, essentially. I'd actually play even more into it than the film does, than The Last Jedi does. Really tapping into how they're just two lonely spirits, basically. We can then keep Rey having this sort of fight with Luke, one where he can, but refuses to stop her, though he tries to reason with her before she goes off to save Kylo or to save Ben, still thinking that yes, she is going to bring him back to the light, which clearly ain't going to happen. And this is where we have another little wrinkle or change something pretty major, that being Chewbacca refuses to take Rey to Kylo Ren, to take her to the guy that just killed Han Solo, his best friend, like the day before, and that he is still rather upset about. And so Rey can instead take Luke's X-Wing at this point, which is there and still functional. He didn't drop it in the ocean or anything in this version. Everything else that comes next with Rey and Kylo is basically the same. Again, she still thinks she's going to turn him back to the light, and we can have Kylo kill Snoke and the throne room fight with the Praetorians and all that. Rey can still be a nobody. Her parents sold her for drinking money, further making her feel alone and like she needs someone. And then when we get Kylo reaching out a hand to her, she takes it. And it'll be at this moment that Finn feels something through the Force, the moment he has his sort of awakening, I suppose, going with the theme or name of the last movie. And this can all happen when the Resistance is sneaking down to Crait, and when Finn feels Rey, she briefly feels him back through the Force, and Kylo is somehow able to pick up on all this, and he then figures out the Resistance didn't or isn't fleeing in the Radis, but sneaking down to Crait. A lot of what happens next with Kylo and the First Order going down to Crait and attacking with the walkers, that can all pretty much be the same, other than we've already eliminated Rose, so we can't or won't have this scene. We also have Rey and Kylo together now, so we will have to have her going with Kylo. We have to give her something to do at the end. And she'll be there in the walker with him. The rest of the First Order, they'll be there thinking like WTF, but they'll have no choice but to go along with what the new Supreme Leader is saying. And then instead of a Force projection of Luke showing up, it's actual Luke showing up with Chewbacca, the real deal. They show up and Luke tells the Resistance that he's going to distract the First Order so they can all get away, and Chewie will take them back to the Falcon, which they secretly parked in the back and can get to no problem. No need for Crystal Foxes showing the way and Rey lifting 1,000 metric tons of boulders. Back on Ahch-To, at the First Jedi Temple, Luke will again be visited by the Force Ghost of Yoda, but no burning trees or anything will be needed this time. Yoda doesn't have to call lightning. Instead, he will ask Luke what he's going to do. Last time something like this happened, he ran off to save his friends. So is he planning to do that again, or what exactly? Luke will say, "I've learned a lot since then," or something along those lines, and Yoda will be like, have you? What happened last time you tried to save your friends? Did that not work out well in the end, As mentioned before, Luke and Chewbacca have gone to Crait. Leia will then be like, "I'm happy to see you, Luke. It should have happened in the last movie, but glad you're here now." And then she'll say, but Ben will just blast you if you go out there. And Luke will say in response, he won't, he can't, he needs to be the one to kill me, just like he needed to kill Han. He needs to do it to finally kill the light within him. Besides, I have to try and save him one more time.
I can save him, I can turn him back to the good side. I have to try.
And this is then where things are going to get a little tricky, because we have to end the confrontation between Luke and Kylo with neither of them getting killed and both getting away, if you will. And there's no easy or good way to do that that makes 100% sense, but I'll try the best I can here. Alright, so Luke does go out there and Kylo doesn't have the walkers fire on him and instead asks Rey for her lightsaber, for the Skywalker saber, the one he wanted very badly in the first movie, the one he said belonged to him. And she, of course, gives it to him, while he gives her his to hold for now. Kylo then goes and confronts Luke and ignites the Skywalker saber and says something along the lines of, how many Jedi grandfather killed with this lightsaber? And so it's very fitting that I shall now kill the last Jedi, which he failed to do. I am finishing what he started, wink wink. Luke then says something like, you can't kill me, and I won't kill you, so we have a bit of a problem. And he then tries to bring him back to the light, tries to say all the right things, but ultimately he is going to fail. And then, much like in the confrontation in the actual Last Jedi, Luke is mostly just trying to dodge his attacks and isn't really trying to fight back, which is, of course, frustrating Kylo, and that frustration is mounting, and the anger is growing and growing and making him stronger and stronger with the dark side. And eventually Kylo does land a pretty significant hit on Luke, and it looks like things are about to go really bad. But that's when, ta-da, the Falcon shows up, and it's coming over the mountains of the base and makes a quick emergency landing right by Luke and Kylo. It's again here that Finn and Rey seem to sense each other. She knows he is on the Falcon quite clearly. And so when Hux orders them to open fire on that ship, it's Rey who says something like, no, you can't, you might hit the Supreme Leader. And when Hux is like, well, that would be so terrible if we accidentally killed Kylo Ren right here, and then says, fire away anyway, Rey pulls out Kylo's lightsaber and holds it to his throat and says, you're not giving that order. And we're kind of left wondering, is she really trying to protect Kylo, or is she maybe trying to protect Finn, who she knows is out there as well? Back to Luke and Kylo, the Falcon has landed, and as the ramp lowers, Kylo sees his mother, he sees Leia, and Luke takes that opportunity to force pull the Skywalker saber away from him. And mind you, he's been using his green saber the whole time. Luke has been using his green saber. But he pulls the Skywalker saber back to him, and it's useless Finn who runs out to help a wounded Luke back to the ship, which is when Luke begins to realize who he was maybe supposed to be training this whole time, that of course being Finn. And after he gives the Skywalker saber to Finn and says, I'm going to train you, or something along those lines, we're going to save both Rey and Kylo Ren or Ben together, that is how the movie all but ends. Now, is that perfect? No, there's certainly a few more things in there that would need to be ironed out and fine-tuned with the story to make total sense here. This is kind of a rough idea, and again, I'm trying to keep it more or less as it was, the same general series of events, and that limits what we can do here. But maybe that makes for a better movie, maybe it doesn't. That will be up for you to decide, because that's all I've got for you this time. Now it is your turn to take to the comments below and tell me what you think about this. Is this a better or maybe worse version of The Last Jedi? Either way, again, take to the comments below and let's talk some Star Wars. And so until next time, thanks for watching.